Hi everyone, welcome to Flux Dev meeting for Thursday, somewhere in January, the 13th of January. Let's have a look at the agenda. Is there an entry? Yes, there is an entry for 13th already. That's all filled out. Brilliant. Okay. So there's a couple of things that we have as standing topics. So let's try and get through those, and then we can go to agenda that are specific to this one. So the first standing topic is round of what's around, as in if there is anything to report on what's happening on the way to GA. Is there any developments there over the last week?
I have made some advancements on RFC 002 around access control list support for Flux sources. Waiting feedback on that, but that's about it.
Cool. Yeah, I saw you've added a wee bit of in response to a comment I made. So that's cool. I'll have a look. Thanks for that. And is there any progress on the great rewrite, by which I mean the following up changes in runtime, package runtime, which had implications for all the controllers, more or less? Is there anything blocking that, I suppose, is the question.
There is nothing blocking it. It's just that I just came back from vacation, so I've been settling again. I've been having great chats with Sunny, who isn't here today because he had some other thing he got to be. But it's moving, and I expect to be able to tell a lot more during our meeting next week.
Cool. All right. And I'll just give, if anyone else wants to ask a question or report anything about GA specific stuff. Okay, and the other standing topic is the security audit backlog. I think there have been developments there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, there's. Yeah, sorry, go for it.
I have merged a bunch of pull requests for fuzzing.
Oh, cool.
Polo. And we are also, I think we fixed all the issues with hiding file close deferrals. You did that for image automation controller. I did that for all the source controller deferrals, and we got the last one in the storage component of source controller, which was also fixed by an external contributor, and that's also merged.
Yes, also on the fuzzing part, I think out of the 6 fuzzing PRs, I think I've reviewed 2, and that there's 2 that I almost have them done, and already kind of making changes on the upstream project as well to make sure that the building doesn't impact us. But yeah, we're definitely progressing well so far.
Yes, fuzzing introduced some delays on the building time. Like, for example, it takes close to 10 minutes to build the image that runs fuzzing. So we are now looking at adding caching through Github Actions. So Github Actions has a caching mechanism for Docker layers. So we don't have to build APN from scratch all the time, get all the packages everywhere. So I have high hopes we can reduce that to a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and to be honest, even on top of that, like one of the problems we have is the official GitHub action is not really supposed to support our model. So our model is several repositories. So what is happening now is actually we download 3 repositories every time we have a PR in one repository, which doesn't make any sense. So yeah, we'll change that as well. So today we definitely would have a PR on that.
Great, thank you very much for moving forward with this.
Yeah, that is really good news. Making progress on the fuzzing stuff. Okay, and anything else about security audits? The RFCs are also tied into the security audit that we've talked about those or mentioned them.
Yes, about that, I think we can now close the issue around documenting Flux authentication, because we merged in December RFC 001 that has this specific documentation. What I think we could do is take parts of that RFC and make it look better on our docs website. So the issue is, please document that on the docs website. We didn't actually do that. We documented it in the RFC process, and now it's just split up maybe. Yeah.
Can we cut corners by just publishing all the RFCs to the website?
That will be beneficial as well, but I think
yeah, it's an intermediate step, maybe. But
yeah,
you kind of need a different factoring for the information for the documentation, because you sort of need to know different things at different times rather than having it all just in one big long screed. So I think it's worth doing the step of trying to kind of filter it out into documentation. Also, the documentation will change, whereas the RFC won't. So it sort of there needs to be a copy which can change, if you see what I mean.
Well, an RFC can also be modified later on.
No.
By a different RFC, yes.
You can write a new RFC, yes, but you shouldn't go back and change the other one. So you could refer to a new RFC which sets it all out, but yeah, there is the other thing about having different bits of information in different places.
Yeah, so the idea is that the Flux CD documentation about authorization should reflect the latest status of authorization. So if we have like 3 RFCs and the last one changes something from the other 2, the information on the doc website should be latest, right? So that's
it'll be a combination of what has come before.
Yeah, so we cannot really close that that issue until we we do that. I'll ask Scott because he started the first version of the security doc to put all the changes from the RFC in there, and also restructure a little bit the documentation so it's not a single page that you scroll forever, have multiple pages. Maybe each section from the RFC could be a dedicated page, so it looks better. And we also need some diagrams or something like that to make the information more consumable.
Cool. Okay. So if that's everything about the security audit backlog, then I can move on to the next agenda, which is Leo wants to talk about user feedback from Flux AKS preview. Leo.
All right, thank you, Michael. And then, hey, everybody. So for those that don't know, the Azure AKS and ARC team has rolled out what's called as Azure Kubernetes Configuration Management on their ARC AKS and AKS service, which basically uses Flux version 2 under the hood to offer AKS users and ARC users a managed GitOps offering and a way to upgrade GitOps to support Flux 2 in ARC-enabled Kubernetes clusters. This new functionality that we supported throughout its integration was available to a pretty solid set of GitOps users over the course of a private preview that lasted, and keep me true here, Chris, maybe a few months, I believe. Back in December 8th, the feature, GitOps Azure Kubernetes Configuration Management with Flux 2, was open for public preview. Over the course of that time, the Microsoft team has supported these early adopters of this new feature in using the service, and has received a lot of feedback as to what these users are looking for, how they're using the service. So I've invited Chris Sanders. Chris is the PM that managed this integration on the AKS side, to share some of these views that we are getting from these users, and understand kind of like how they're using Flux, what type of feedback we're getting. So thank you, Chris, for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us your perspective. So the floor is all yours. Really appreciate it.
Hey, folks. Yeah, we've been working with the Flux maintainers and the Weaveworks team now for over a year as we implement Flux and then Flux 2 within the Azure offering, which is called Azure Kubernetes Configuration Management. And as Leo said, it provides GitOps, a managed GitOps capability for AKS clusters and for Arc Kubernetes clusters. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Arc Kubernetes clusters, this is just a way to manage clusters that are located off of Azure, either on-prem or in some other cloud. So basically what we're able to provide now to customers is the ability to use Flux to manage the deployments to their Kubernetes clusters anywhere. And we found Flux a very nice tool set to implement because it follows very similar patterns that are already used for many Azure services like Azure Monitor, for instance. You know, you install an agent in a cluster and it does its job. Same thing with Flux. You install the Flux the controllers now into the cluster, and then you can start managing the configuration of that cluster. So, and customers really like this too. But one of the feedbacks that we do get is we do talk to some folks, and we're getting more feedback about Argo CD. Okay, basically Argo CD does very similar thing. It'll configure the clusters, but there's a couple aspects that customers like, and they just literally won't use Flux because of it. One is the UX, and you already know this. You've been working on some UX components in your open source, and we talked to one customer in particular who a large European manufacturer, and they actually walked us through how they use Argo CD. And one of the main cases is literally developers are using the Argo CD UX as part of the flow of delivering applications to different clusters in different locations. And part of that was the ability to view. So you don't put an automatic commit. And I think internally in the Flux docs, this is called ClickOps, I think I've seen. And I'm not sure if it's a great way to do it, but I'm just letting you know that folks are doing it and they like it. Where basically you have a commit already into the repo, but it doesn't get reconciled to the cluster. And then in Argo CD, the person can go see the diff, all right? And they can see exactly what's going to change, and then they can push the button or not. And this is actually liked. They really like it. So I'm not proposing it myself, but I'm just putting it out there to you that folks actually prefer this solution sometimes for part of their flow. And I just wonder what, this is just one piece of feedback, and what the Flux response is to this sort of process that some customers like. Second is the ability to gate reconciliation. And you have many industries where, say for instance, independent service vendor, an ISV, delivering software out to different customers, those customers want to be able to approve whether an update happens or not in their location. And that's, but if GitOps is being used, it just boom, it just goes there, right? So they want a gating mechanism where they can be an automatic or a manual approval before the actual deployment to their cluster. I noticed that that in the discussions, in the Flux discussions, discussion number 870, and you've already made a proposal on this, Stefan, the ability to be able to gate reconciliation in a cluster. And there's also, and that one also referred to this discussion 820, which is the ability to look at a diff as well. So both of those actually are resonating, and then there are requests that we've already heard from customers as well. And just wanted to bring that up and let you know that there is noise out there that could help prioritize these particular discussion topics. And I'll stop there and just open it up to discussion.
Thank you, Chris. So let's start with the diff. We've been working on a Flux diff utility in the CLI. And what happens here is that we took a different approach from Argo. In Argo, you have to commit your things to see the diff. With Flux, we want to get the diff closer to the operation people or the developer itself. So what happens right now, we have been working on a diff command it will be released this month, I think. We are going to release it as experimental, so we can get some feedback from people around this utility. Let me link it here in the chat so Hida can add it to the agenda. The idea is, for example, let's take the Visual Studio Code plugin with Flux, right? You install the plugin, then you say, okay, I want to edit this app repo where my app definitions are. You're going to make the changes there inside Visual Studio Code. Then Visual Studio Code will offer a preview button that behind the scenes will run the same code as the Flux diff command that will show you, it will connect to the cluster, and instead of actually applying those things, it will do a server-side dry-run apply, and then it will return a nice view of the things that are going to be changed on the cluster. So maybe you've changed a single field, let's say in a config map, but that config map is treated by Flux as immutable, and that config map will trigger an update on all your deployments that reference that config map and so on. So in the diff output, you'll see that, okay, this is what changed my config map. Then all these deployments or all these stateful sets or everything else you have, all of those will have a new generation, a new revision, and that means they will also get deployed and so on. And another thing that we've been working for, especially for the diff, is Flux comes with secrets encryption and decryption using SOAPs and Cloud KMS and other solutions. So the idea is that we cannot decrypt secrets on a developer machine. Maybe that particular developer does not have access to Cloud KMS and so on. So what we are doing in the diff command, we are using the cluster, but in the output of the diff, we mask all the secret values, but we tell you, hey, this value will change if you apply this thing, but you'll not actually see the value. You'll see a mask of it. So that's something that kubectl diff also has, and we've been working on getting this feature also for encrypted secrets. And that's all very, very close to a release candidate. From there, people that are maintaining the Visual Studio Code plugin could take advantage of this feature and bring the diff mechanism close to the developer. Secondly, around the gating mechanism, we have a proposal there made by me, I don't know, last year. Lots of people have shown excitement around it. Many of them need it. So it's definitely something that people desire. Our mentality around gating things for clusters where, hey, you'll open a pull request, you'll wait for your peers to approve that pull request, and that's the gate. And once you merge it, that means the gate is opened because you merged it. Well, seems that this Git workflow doesn't quite fit all needs. I'm hearing that, okay, but my manager doesn't understand Git, doesn't want to be part of the Git workflow, but they want this button where they want to click, yes, I approve this new version. So that's where the gating mechanism comes into scene. Like everything else, Flux related, we don't have a user interface, so it's up to Azure to build a user interface on top of the gating mechanism where you have a button and click that button, then it annotates something in the cluster, and that means, hey, I'm opening the gate. But the mechanism will also offer a way for you to open and close gates from outside the cluster through notification controller. So things like, I don't know, you could code this in your Jenkins pipelines or other things that allows you to click buttons, but they don't have directly access to the cluster. They will call out to notification control, and notification control will be the one that signals all the other controls, hey, now the gate is open, and so on. So that's what we are currently thinking of.
Yeah, that sounds good. I just wanted to bring this to your attention that there is interest, and keep it on the burner for future implementation. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll look forward to that diff capability too, and the fact that you put it in VS Code. I think that's a good approach. Move everything left closer to the developer there. It sounds like a good approach.
Yes, it's also the diff thing was also linked somehow to the gating stuff. So if people, they don't want to deal with Git, then diff should happen before you push anything to Git. Diff should happen on your local set of the manifests. You don't have to push anything to actually see what will happen, and only then you'll push it after you are convinced that, okay, my changes are what I intended them to be, and then you push to upstream those changes.
I think the reason people like the click to advance the commit that's being synced is that it shows you right then and there. It's like, this is what will happen. And if you, in Argo CD, you can have things that are like JSON it or produce some other way where it is not necessarily obvious from the source code what the outcome is going to be. But once you see it in that UI, it shows you, what the YAML that will be applied is. And I think that's actually, we're kind of being slightly pejorative by saying it's ClickOps. I think it's a totally valid thing to want, and it doesn't have to be considered outside GitOps. You could have a button that you push and it writes, it advances the pointer in your Git repository to the next commit.
Yeah, I think the big point there is that, like Stefan's example, where a small change in the manifest can actually trigger a bunch of changes within the cluster, but that's not obvious from just looking at the manifest changes in the Git repo.
Yes, of course.
So
also true. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So the idea of looking at what's actually going to happen, not what the definition is, but what is actually going to happen is quite powerful. And people do want the ability to either gate that or at least to kind of hold it back until you click a button. And it doesn't have to step outside the GitOps model. Doesn't have to be ClickOps.
Oh, cool. Sounds like there's a lot of thought going into this, so that's good. Is there anything else you were thinking of, Leo?
No, I think this is good. I really appreciate the time and the feedback. Keep it coming. Like the more users that are exposed to this new service and the more use cases that we can learn from, the better position we're going to be. So I really appreciate the time. And thanks everybody for the feedback. And that was it. Thank you, Chris. Thanks a bunch. That's it for me, Michael.
Yeah, seconded. Thanks, Chris, for coming and telling us about that. And congratulations to you and your team on getting to the preview and running that.
Yeah, I want to
Pretty
thank everyone who's working on Flux too. Great job. Also, Jonathan isn't here, but great job helping him with his questions as we were implementing it. Azure is all in with Flux, so we're gonna be bugging you guys for a long time.
We're looking forward to it.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, let's go on to the next agenda, which is, oh, I've got a bit. I want to give Stacey, who quite often has to leave. She hasn't left already, has she?
No, I'm still here.
No, she's still here. I was fooled by you flipping the camera on.
Yeah,
Stacey, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I just wanted to mention a couple of upcoming events that Pinky, also Priyanka is her full name, but I call her Pinky. So she'll be presenting on a couple of Flux topics at the end of January, beginning of February, and then we'll be kicking off a series of Flux talks. So look for those upcoming as well. I have those links in the agenda there. So January 27th will just be a quick refresher. And then on the 2nd, we have Pinky slotted for walking through the Getting Started guide for Flux. So starting off with some basics, and then we'll get a little bit deeper as we get into the year. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, nice one. Thanks, Stacey. And let's go on to the next. Hey, Lee. Long time no see. Happy New Year.
Great to hear from you, Michael.
So Hida has a topic down here, detection of Active Directory endpoint in Azure.
Yeah, I figured with some of the Microsoft folks here, or at least one, it might be worth asking it right now. I've been working on better integration in the customized controller to support Azure something, at least their KMS, their secret solution. And one of the things I've been running into is that with the various configuration files Microsoft instructs people to create, there is one which has an entry point for the Active Directory endpoint that should be connected to, but the other one doesn't have this field. And I'm wondering how I can determine in a cluster in what region it's running, because you have a public region, you have a German region, you have a Chinese region, and a US government region.
Hida, if you want to send me that question, I'm not a good person to answer it right now based on my knowledge, but if you want to send me the info, I can connect you with people who can answer that. Does that sound good?
Yes, we'll do that. Okay, thank you.
Do you have my email? Or?
I can find it probably somewhere.
My alias is CSAND, CSAND at Microsoft.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just quick question, Hida, did you consider looking at the node metadata?
At the what?
The Kubernetes node metadata.
Well, I've been considering various things, but because I don't have easy access to an AKS cluster, especially not in the regions that are tricky, I simply have no idea what kind of variables are available within the environment to make use of it.
Yeah, okay. Should get into an AKS cluster then or something. But yeah, you can either probably get labels, node labels from Kubernetes, or you can get information directly from the metadata service, the Azure one.
Yeah,
we do have our accounts, right?
Yeah, you should.
So we have our account Azure subscription where we run our end-to-end tests, and You should have access to it.
He might not have access, but
I can give him
definitely-
access in that case.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah.
I know Stefan has access.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I have access in some way. It's more that I like to go by documentation so that I have it declared somewhere instead of relying on some variable that's magically available in the environment. But they all sound good. It's more that if there is some environment variable that, for example, automatically gets injected to any pod that's being run on the cluster, then I happily will take that variable because I know that Go code from Microsoft itself has certain assumptions around variables. It's just that I don't know which variable are actually available within the cluster and which ones are, I don't know, considered to be user configured variables or whatever. If I get the information from the node, for example, I have to map it back to something the Go code understands. So if there's a variable with the right thing so that I can just blindly map it to how they name their environment config in the code, I would rather use that. But I will send Chris an email and I think I will get the right information then.
Cool. Okay, I think, barring people adding to the agenda, I'm guessing, Stefan, do you want to talk a bit about the 0.25 release?
Yes, so we have released 0.2.50 yesterday. Then we found a regression bug, and we for self-hosted GitLab servers, we had an issue with some changes we made to how we talk to the GitLab API. We reverted those and we published a patch. Now we found another bug due to the fact that we've updated all our runtime and client packages coming from Kubernetes. So we are now on the latest Kubernetes client, and that triggered some weird behavior when we try to dry run stateful sets. So even if the stateful set is a V1 API, new things have been added to the status sub-resource, which are not known to older Kubernetes versions. So when you try to run it, it will say, hey, I'm not aware of this field, so I'm going to reject your dry run. And now I have a solution. The status sub-resource should never be specified in Git or anywhere else as your desired state, because status is a write-only field inside the cluster. So what I'm doing now, what my patch is currently, what my approach is, we are going to remove all the status sub-resources, even if you have those in Git somehow. I'm guessing if you have done a kubectl export or something like that, write your or get -o YAML to put your things in Git that were on the cluster. You may have all sorts of fields in there that are not supposed to be part of your desired state. Also stuff like creation timestamp, UUDs, and so on. So I have taken care of, we've removed those in the past, but we haven't looked at the status resource. So now we are basically removing the status sub-resource from every single object before we do this dry run apply. So I'm guessing later tonight, I'm going to release Flux patch 0.25.2 with this fix, because it's blocking everybody that's not on the newer Kubernetes versions where the stateful set has that field. Also, as an announcement, this is the last minor release of Flux where we support Kubernetes 1.19 and older than 1.19, 1.16, 1.17. We are going to drop support for all these versions, starting with 0.26 Flux version. The reason for this is that older versions have all sorts of bugs, and these versions are considered end of life. So for example, in 1.19, the validation webhook does not convert integers to string. So if you define your service port as an integer, it will fail. Right, so we had to do all sorts of things. We had to convert all the things that you have in Git into the older types of Kubernetes that had the conversion mechanism in there. Then we basically rewrote the manifest in memory, and then we apply it to deal with all these bugs. And because we do all these sorts of, trying to support older versions, we now hit other issues with newer versions. So we have to, at some point, we have to say, we have to stop doing that. And since Kubernetes 1.19 is end of life since November last year, we've decided that we are not going to support it any longer. So for those of you who cannot upgrade from 1.19, you'll have to stay on the 0.25 releases until you can upgrade. And we are going to try and backport major bugs to 0.25. If that's the case, I really hope that will not be the case. But that's the main announcement. We are going to stop supporting end of life releases of Kubernetes probably from next month.
Okay, thanks, Stefan. So let's see if there's any stuff added since I last looked. No, nothing added to the agenda, so I'll just throw it open if anyone wants to spontaneously bring up something they want to talk about.
I can take an opportunity for that. Sorry, I just landed.
Please jump in
from a plane not long ago, and I saw that I could make this meeting. So really happy to see everyone. Just on the API deprecation, or sorry, the Kubernetes version deprecation. If it hasn't been pointed out already, maybe we could just include the 0.25 version string as a suggestion for people in case, 7 Flux releases from now, they're trying to use like, .34 or whatever, and then it says this is not supported on your cluster, that they could get pointed back to the really old version of Flux at least. So it could just help with user adoption or something to might prevent some issues from being brought up. And then
just have like an error response somewhere which says,
yeah, when it says
the
this
last version that supports your Kubernetes is
0.25.
Yeah, good idea.
And then yeah, sorry, I won't have time to comment on the GitHub issue or something, and hopefully it's already been pointed out. But the other thing is, I was going to sync up with you wonderful folks to see if anyone would, from the community or from the Flux team, would want to join the Tanzu Tuesday Twitch stream sometime, just to talk about anything Flux related. We would love to feature any kind of Flux community content, any improvements to the project, any integrations with cool stuff. So just whenever, if someone from the community is looking to have a great opportunity to go hang out with some cool people and speak in a Twitch type format, then we have that. And yeah, just great to see everyone.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm up for it.
There you go. You got at least one volunteer. Brilliant.
You want to bite, Stefan? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We'll make sure just whenever you have the bandwidth, whatever timeline, I can connect you up with our coordinator, Beth Spatz, to get the timeline or the time slot and the reminders and all the promo content and any other collab stuff that we want to do. So.
Cool.
If it's an open invitation, Lee, do you mind writing it into the meeting notes?
I'm not there right now. is someone there right now that can just add and then just reach out to Stealthybox on Slack or anywhere, Leakapili, anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It is an open invitation. Absolutely.
Nice one. Cool.
And we'd be happy to feature Flux content more than once as well. So,
Haley, I wanted to say to you that we haven't forget about the OCI image as source pull request. We have been battling dependencies and CVs and all this stuff with all our dependencies. So that's what we've been doing the first week of
actually, we're like super happy with where that's sitting right now, because it was honestly like the maintainer response and the sort of consensus on the design, and I've seen you even like moving some of those design decisions as well into your customizer project with the cosign validation and that API shape. All of that is like, it just feels really good and it's easy to collaborate. The person who decided to upstream all of that code is actually like director level, like a team lead type person. And most of that person's team is on like a 3-month sabbatical at the moment. So there will be kind of more heads around to look at Carvel, Flux, ecosystem stuff, I'm sure into the coming quarters. So
I would like to move forward with this pull request. So what would you advise? I could take this fork, put it back in a branch in source controller, keep the contribution as it is, and continue in a different pull request, including all the source changes, because we really need to add unit testing to it. That's a major requirement, and I found some small issues with how assembler is being dealt there and so on. But I want to keep Ben Hale contributions, and I think the best way for me is I'm going to do a fork of this pull request, bring it back inside with all his commits, and I can continue the work in a different PR.
Yeah, to just carry the PR.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that will be a problem. I think Ben will be excited to hear about that. And probably just good etiquette to communicate with him before doing so too much. But
so it's not going to happen this month because
I'll just send Ben a DM now.
Yeah, if you can ping him or whatever.
Cool.
If you guys can continue, or whoever from your team can continue, this is great. But if not, let me know, and starting next month I can take this over and add test suite and everything, so we can have let's say a release candidate of the OCI repository source for people to play with, in the shape that it is now, without cosign and everything else. Just the fact that you can pull manifest from OCI and get some feedback from end users, because we cannot ask end users, hey, go and build your own source controller based on this pull request and deploy it on your cluster. That will not happen. We have to do,
of course, we want to definitely upstream it for sure, and get the users' hands on it, and see what's working and what people get creative with. I have not been following. Is there a generic source composition now? Or is it only for Git repos?
What do you mean generic source composition?
You mean the mounting bits of sources in other sources?
Yes. Yeah.
The include feature, you mean, where you layer multiple sources into one? No, that's we made that specifically locked into the Git implementation, because we felt that feature offers the way out of dealing with Git modules, some modules, sorry. And the discussion there was with Hide and Philip and others was that we need to rethink a little bit the composition to extend it to any kind of source. So what we delivered there was a way out of, I don't want to deal with Git submodules. I don't want to push every time and resync manually all the submodules. How can Flux do it for me? And that was our solution. But that's definitely something that could benefit OCI from. Like, you can have many images, I don't know, all your cluster add-ons, and you want to bring them together as a single source and do a single customization for all of them. I understand this, and it's natural that you will ask this because so many people are already doing it using Git repositories, right? So if the OCI repository is an alternative to Git repositories, then all those features will be wanted.
In particular, I think what will be a common desire is for folks to take patches from Git and put them on top of something from an OCI source, like a vendor distributed or project distributed thing, right? And then you want to add some additional customize or YTT program or something. And then kind of in that same space, as far as improvements to source controller, is just being maybe experimenting with the thought of like a reactive watcher that is the group version kind independent, so that the types of sources that can get reactive updates in source controller don't have to be hard coded. Maybe there can be some duck typing or something.
A generic watcher, I got it.
Yeah, so that way when something describes a declaration onto a source, that the sources can propagate the updates to the other controllers when you bolt on like additional controllers to Flux. Like say if I wanted to add my own source with a different controller, it'd be nice for those things to propagate to like customized controller, like for there to be a way for a customized controller to watch for sources that are not just Flux types. And then, sorry, it's not in source controller. It's in like the things that consume it, but like changing the way that the library does that, so that it's not coupled to a customization necessarily, or a bucket, or maybe because I don't think you can publish buckets easily and have them like not be owned by source controller. That's like kind of been a problem in my head. Like I want something else to produce buckets and like decide what is inside of them. Anyway, kind of getting into design, and this is just opportunistic and unplanned, but
so the code that, for example, in customized controller and Helm controller, the code that fetches the artifact, checks checksum, untars it, and then does its own thing with it, that is not specific to, doesn't care. It looks at the artifact type, which is embedded in the
it's just already
status sub resource, and the artifact type, if you put that on a different source, you don't have to change anything around fetching that and applying it.
So it still works, but just the reactive loop for getting
the reactive loop is the issue, and how you refer to a new type inside a customization or inside the Helm release is the issue, right? Because there we enforce you have to have this type, either bucket or either Git repository for customized controller, and from Helm control is either Helm repository or Git repository or bucket, right? And we have validation for that and so on. We could, of course, remove those validations, but then you could just place anything there, and
you could change it to a runtime validation that checks for if it's a defaulted API group, then you can return the errors. But if it's a non-default API group, then the controller will allow any value in the version and kind.
Something like an admission controller that does
Yeah,
other
an
types
admission
of
controller
validation
could
that
do that as well.
I think this is discussed at length in the
Yeah.
Ben's.
Anyway, super exciting. Also, kind of talking through this and about like extending Flux with other controllers is definitely the generic source composition could be the job of a controller that produces a bucket, right? Like a in-cluster bucket. And then there's
You
like
could have a composite source.
Yeah, you could have composite source.
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be lots of ideas continuously, more or less, for kinds of source that do slightly different things or come from slightly different places. I don't think
just creating pipelines in a declarative way and letting Flux do what it does best.
Yeah, that's another one. Yep.
Great, awesome. That's everything that's on my mind. Aside from just being happy to see all
for dropping by, Lee.
Yeah, I can try to take this meeting more. I've just spent the past 2 months in Hawaii time, waking up super early to match the mainland, and so I think it'll be easier for me to get up early in the morning.
Cool. All right, we've got a couple of minutes if anyone wants to jump in. Otherwise, time to go make a cup of tea. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Miss you, Lee.
I said, I like the fire.
Oh yeah, I've been messing around with it.
Give Pepsi a big hug for me too.
He's
and tell Tanya I said hi.
Pepsi.
He is on the left side.
Is he right there behind you?
Yeah, I gotta like turn off my blur. And then you can see his portrait on the mantle, and then you might not be able to make him out. There he is. He's
I can. He's a little blob.
Oh. Yeah. He's just got off the plane.
Oh, he was with y'all
6 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's zonked out now.
Does Pepsi fly first class?
We got economy plus